Welcome back to another episode of Two Average Husbands, where we bring you a few drinks, a few topics, and two husbands. I'm your host, Jake.
I'm your host, Kyle. Welcome back, everybody. Jake trying something new out there. That's
hey,
pretty
man.
good.
We're getting close to having to start season 2. Switch over from the season 1 banners when we upload it. So, got to start testing some things out.
I suppose that's true. We got to enter the second season of this as we enter another. I don't know, what is it going to be? We're almost to 25 episodes.
Yeah, this is
21.
This is 21, so we'll probably do it in 25 episode stints. So we got a few more weeks up until we hit the season 2, which will hopefully have a few revamps for you that I'm working on in the back end that Kyle doesn't even know about. So that'll all be fun to see.
We'll have to come up with some new themes.
Yeah,
get some themed episodes. I still want to do segments. Like I said, the NFL one is the one that for now. But I mean, eventually I'd like to do some other segments as well.
Yeah.
But
speaking of the NFL, I'm going to go ahead and start our.
Hot pause. What are you drinking this week? Thanks, Jake.
Oh, well, I was going to introduce the NFL segment, say something, and then introduce the beer. No. Fine.
Yeah, start drinking.
I am drinking a Goose Island beer. It is Tepache. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. Sunset, which is a Tepache-inspired ale aged in tequila barrels with pineapple juice, orange juice, tamarind puree, all added in. And it is aged in tequila barrels, if I didn't mention that. So I had a sample tasting of this a few weeks back, but I don't remember what it tastes like. So I'm going to try it. Fuck it.
You're shaking that?
Yeah. You're supposed to like get the puree up.
Huh.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds good. I've seen some of the stouts where they're like, give it a good 1, 2, 3 turn, but I don't really ever see them say shake. It's violent for a caffeinated, carbonated beverage. I mean.
Well, let me tell you, it worked perfectly fine.
Well, the one that I am going to be drinking this week is the Rogue Hazelnut Brown Nectar. It's always like my light makes it really shitty to see what these look like. But anyway, this is a nutty twist to a traditional European-style brown ale, dark brown in color with a hazelnut aroma and a rich, nutty flavor.
We were talking about it before the podcast. I love Rogue, so I have high expectations for that beverage.
It says it pairs well with a grilled cheese sandwich.
I'm in. I'm full bore in.
And also pork chops and bread pudding. But the grilled cheese is a unique one that you wouldn't see a beer usually paired with.
So it's telling you to basically make a grilled cheese, some pork chops, and have bread pudding for dessert, all while drinking that beer?
That's right, yeah.
I'm definitely in.
Yeah.
It's fucking exciting. But anyway, speaking of exciting, I do want to introduce our football segment for the week and just talk briefly about something. If anybody didn't see myself post it on Twitter, I have partnered with an organization called JWB Fantasy Football, and I will be an analyst for them during this upcoming fantasy football season, where I will be writing weekly articles that have to do with sleeper candidates for fantasy football each week. And so, Kyle, I want to kind of get your opinion on that as we go into the season. Who are some players, you can look at this from a fantasy perspective or from a regular football perspective, who are some players that you think people, at least to this point in the preseason, aren't talking about enough and what their impact is going to be this year?
I'd say it depends on who you're listening to, honestly, because even obviously if you pay attention leading up to the fantasy football year and even throughout the year, right? Like every analyst or every network is talking about their sleepers, which depending on kind of when you catch the conversation, a lot of if it's the big name people like ESPN with Field Yates, Matthew Berry, and you look at one of my favorite podcasts is the Fantasy Footballers. You've got Andy Holloway and the gang there too, and because of them partially, but also because of some background too. And you and I have already had this conversation, so I know you completely disagree with this one, but I think as far as a tight end breakout candidate this year, you've got Tyler Higbee, who's going to be going somewhere right now around the 10th round in drafts, and he could potentially be a weapon that is significantly more utilized and have a little bit of a breakout this year. Not saying he's going to be Darren Waller or George Kittle or Travis Kelce, but he is going to be a weapon on the offense. It's probably going to get utilized more than he has in the past, especially with the quarterback transition. So I'm excited to see what he does this year, and I think he is a sleeper at the tight end position. And if you're a running back early type of drafter, and then you go into the wide receivers, Higbee's a good option if you don't want to try to spring and pay the draft capital for a Kittle or a Kelce.
For sure, yeah. It's not that I think Tyler Higbee's a really good football player. I just think the problem with him comes from the fact that his skill set is definitely more geared towards his ability as a traditional football tight end. He's a better real football player than he is fantasy asset, if that makes sense. But if I'm thinking of like a couple of the early fantasy sleepers that kind of come to mind for me, one that is in fantasy circles you're hearing a ton about, but in real football circles it's not really being talked about. I think Trey Sermon is really going to shock a lot of people this year. I'm the first to admit that I didn't necessarily see the hype with him early on. It took me kind of questioning it on Twitter, and a lot of people coming to the Sermon's defense and kind of breaking down why they thought he was going to be such a good asset for them. But especially with now, like, it was kind of a joke that Raheem Mostert is a ticking time bomb and you're waiting for him to get hurt. Well, guess what? It's the preseason and now he's hurt. So we could potentially, and it's a back injury. And as we've seen with back injuries from athletes in football and from other sports, it's a back injury can nag for a really long time. We could see Trey Sermon start the year off as the starting running back and never give that up. And I think that's an underappreciated asset. In a lot of redraft leagues, like I'd have to let me pull up Fantasy Pros ADP here.
I have a feeling he's not going to start. But I do think that he eventually it's going to be similar to a situation with you have Javonte Williams. But Javonte Williams has a lot more hype behind his name, so you're paying a much more significant draft capital for Javonte. And if you're looking for a bench stash that's not going to be an immediate starter, probably going after Trey Sermon in the later rounds of the draft is an absolutely great strategy, in my opinion.
The way I'm looking at it, though, like with me thinking of him being the starter, like there's no real competition for somebody else to take. Like he's listed as number 2 on the depth chart right now, whether you believe that or not. But if Mostert misses time, like I think it's a legitimate shot that we see Sermon start right away. And even if he misses time, yeah. But even if he doesn't miss time, we've seen that they don't give Mostert a ton of carries, and that is a run-heavy offense, especially if they do decide to start the year with Jimmy G. I think they're going to run a lot more than they're going to pass. And Trey Sermon going as running back 37, going off of the board around that doesn't make sense. His overall pick spot is about 91, but there's some guys who are going before him typically in that 90 range. So you're going to get him in the 90 to 100 pick range. So that's going to be a 9th or 10th round pick. And kind of like what Kyle's saying, like if you fade running back a little bit early, like the people who like to do 0 running back builds, I think he's a really great option for somebody who is going to surprise a lot of people. And then the other sleeper that I have is kind of also a later round running back that you're going to draft, but it's Phillip Lindsay. Phillip Lindsay's only real competition for touches right now, especially with the way the depth chart is currently set up. Mark Ingram II is currently the running back listed in front of him, and we've seen him be entirely ineffective for basically the last year and a half.
He looks okay in the preseason right now, which is interesting.
He looks okay, but it's not like...
But Phillip Lindsay doesn't look good either. Like the Houston backfield... And the reason that I would argue against this sleeper, right, is I think the Houston backfield is a mess. It is an unpredictable mess, and you don't know where it's going to go. And it could be that these guys are just blowing smoke up your ass, and then they're going to start off, and David Johnson's still going to be the starter. That is in the realm of possibilities. I don't think that's going to happen, given what we've seen in the preseason. But I wouldn't want any of these guys right now.
But here's my argument with Lindsay, is that he costs you almost nothing to draft.
Yeah, definitely.
He is going as running back 49 at 150th overall. We're talking like a 15th round pick when we're throwing darts at a board anyway. And he's the only guy in that range that's giving you legitimate starter upside. Like,
I don't disagree with you completely, but I think it depends on the depth of the league too. Like, are we talking like a 10-team league? Because you shouldn't have Phillip Lindsay on your fucking bench even in a 10-team league. Like,
yeah, you should. I mean, by that number, you should. But if you're think about it. If he's going 150th overall in a 10-team league, if you have 18 rounds, which is pretty standard, that's 180 picks. Like there's people most people in 10-team leagues, you're going to be rostering Phillip Lindsay.
Maybe.
At least somebody's going to
roster him. League right now, unless somebody picked him up off the waivers already.
And the only reason he's not is because I got a lot of depth that I don't need him. But
that's what I'm saying. Like, most people in our league do. And honestly, I'll let you finish, and then I'll transition to what I was going to say too, because I just did a move in our fantasy league as well that I think is a relevant move to make. And I would favor the move over going to Phillip Lindsay. So I'll let you speak the rest of your piece, and then I'll say my part on that too.
So my part on that, to kind of wrap that up, is while he's looked fine in the preseason, I will admit he hasn't looked terrible. We're talking about a running back that really wasn't productive his production's kind of always come from he needs volume to produce. He's not a guy who's going to, be able to break off these crazy long runs or anything like that. Like his longest run in the past 3 years is 53 yards. Like he's not an explosive player by any means. And he's relied a lot on touchdowns to kind of keep any relevant fantasy volume the past few years. And he didn't even look good last year with a Baltimore offensive line that was one of the best in football. And Philip Lindsay, he brings a much more versatile skill set. He's a much better pass catcher than Ingram is. He's a much faster running back. He's more explosive. I just think if you're going to have to, like, if you're looking at a sleeper, we're talking about guys that a lot of people aren't thinking of rostering. And a lot of people probably aren't thinking of rostering somebody in this backfield. And for them to come out and put David Johnson as third in the depth chart, I think that says a lot more about how this team feels about Philip Lindsay than it says how they feel about any other asset that they have.
That's probably a fair take. You're right. He's a sleeper candidate. I will agree with you. I don't understand.
I'm not telling you to
do it either, because the interesting thing too is that David Johnson had a pretty good season.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for as much shit as people want to give David Johnson is a good pass catching back. He is a good running back, and he has the qualities and he's not so old that he's not going to be effective at least another season. So I'm surprised they're trying to.
I don't know. He's pretty old
him so far.
For a running back.
Well, I think, what is he? 29.
29, yeah. Gonna be 30 this season.
And I get that, but I feel like if he would have played poorly last season, I would have more concern about Houston using him as the lead back. But he didn't. But that also does go part of the fact of why I say avoid the backfield in general, though, is that they're already saying David Johnson's going to be a third down back, right? Philip Lindsay might have it between the 20s. Who fucking knows where Ingram fits in? And so I don't know. I get what you're saying, and I'm with you. I actually almost had drafted David Johnson because I was pretty settled on the fact that he was going to be the starter.
Me too. I had him in a few leagues.
And so I dropped David Johnson, and I picked up Sony Michel. And I think Sony Michel is a better sleeper than Philip Lindsay. And I believe that because I think the Houston Texans are going to be fucking terrible.
Agreed.
And so in a split backfield, potentially between three running backs, I think going for now Sony Michel, moving over to the Patriots, right? You have...
you mean the Rams?
Sorry, yeah, moving from the Patriots to the Rams. You have the already injured Cam Akers. You have Darrell Henderson, who's struggling with some injuries already. This one's just a thumb, but who knows? Like, there is a potential that Sony Michel ends up leading that backfield in touches. And so I think from a sleeping perspective, like I would rather just throw Sony Michel on my bench and see than rely on any of the running backs in Houston. And if I'm wrong, I'll drop Sony Michel and try to pick up one of those running backs as the season goes on. Who knows? But I'm just not that interested in the Houston backfield at all. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. I can't really blame you. But yeah, that was just kind of what I wanted to see, just because that's a lot of what I'm going to be writing about. We're going to combine our rankings as, the JWB team as a whole, and then I'm going to be writing about people outside of a certain tier week to week. So definitely make sure you check that out. All of their information can be found on my Twitter, so you can just follow us, follow all the guys that are part of JWB. But it'll be fun to finally write about some fantasy football. I've never done written content, so that'll be interesting to see. But
see what Jake's spelling and grammar is like.
It's very good. I have a master's degree, and all I did to get it was write papers. So I can write.
Just QCing you.
Shut up. Anyways, all right. Now
I'm gonna touch on a couple other things really quick before we bounce out of the NFL realm, because I think there's a few topics. First of all, I want to throw out some other sleeper candidates because we talked in depth about that one, and we kind of missed out on some of these other ones. But I think Jamal Williams is a valid sleeper candidate given the DeAndre Swift injuries. Just keep him on your radar. You never know; he could be the starting back. Tyler Boyd has been slept on this season.
Yes.
Because of Higgins and why the fuck am I blanking on the other
Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase, thank you. Higgins and Chase have way overshadowed, and Jamar Chase doesn't look good in the preseason. The connection's not really there with Burrow, and people are just kind of letting Boyd fall way into the late rounds. And it's completely possible that Boyd is just going to have an amazing season still. So don't sleep on Tyler Boyd. DPJ, Diamond Peoples-Jones. I know everybody there's not very many believers out there, but there is an injury-prone offense in Cleveland. So I probably wouldn't do it in a redraft league, but I would say you should absolutely have him benched in a dynasty league.
Oh, definitely.
Just in case the injuries happen.
He was an early declare too, if I remember right. I think he played all of last season at age 21.
Yeah.
So, he's a young guy, but I definitely agree a lot with what you're saying. I think the Jamar Chase being bad in the preseason stuff is definitely not, I don't want to say it's not a concern, but it's not a very big concern to me. The man hasn't played a snap of real football in 2 years. Like, inevitably he's going to have some hesitation about contact, and supposedly the last few practices he's looked a lot better, but there is the drama that some people saw, some people didn't, about Twitter. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but there were some accusations that were thrown around about him. Nothing seeming to come from it, so who knows, but that's one thing to keep in mind. I definitely agree with you that there are some really deep, that Cleveland team is so deep in terms of talent is the only real concern that I have, but we're talking about a guy who's drafted in the 6th round. That means he's on a 3-year contract, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3, which means that even if he shows something this year, there's going to be a team that's going to give him a chance in 2 years when he's 24 and he's the age of some guys who came out in this current draft.
That's the thing, right, is he has been showing out in the preseason, which is why I bring him up again, too, because Jarvis Landry and OBJ haven't really been playing in the preseason at all, and so he has had the opportunity to put on a little bit of a show, and he's looked pretty good. So I think he's a stash in your dynasty leagues.
Definitely. Yeah.
You know who else is getting slept on final 2? Corey Davis, Will Fuller. Slept the fuck on, falling way into the late rounds. Will Fuller's only suspended 1 game. Jalen Waddle's already showing injury problems. Will Fuller, I am fully confident that he's going to be a weapon in this offense.
Corey Davis is I've kind of planted my flag on this on Twitter, but Corey Davis is going to be a league winner for a lot of people this year. Yeah. He is going so late in drafts, and the connection seems to be very real between him and Zach Wilson this year.
Zach Wilson looks better than you thought. I know it. You can admit it.
Here's the thing. I never thought Zach Wilson was bad. I still don't think Zach Wilson's bad. This was the best quarterback class in recent memory for me. Yeah. Besides that, obviously that 2018 draft class when you have Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes coming out, like it's going to be hard to beat those two. But I never thought he was going to be bad. I needed to have a hot take in the quarterback pool, and that was the one I decided to make. So let it be what it is. But yeah, no. I'm trying to find him here. Corey Davis is going wide receiver 47.
Yeah,
he's got legitimate wide receiver, like high wide receiver 2 upside.
He's going to be the wide receiver 1 on the offense, and it'll make him a wide receiver 2 for fantasy for sure.
Yeah,
at least
definitely.
That's probably the floor.
Yeah, I legitimately think, especially if the defense struggles at all, they're going to be a pass heavy team, and there's a reason that Corey Davis has I forget what the number was, but it's 77% of Zach Wilson's targets have gone to Corey Davis. It's 77 or 88. It's some crazy number.
I think it was 8 out of 13 routes he was targeted or something like that.
It's a lot. It's a crazy percentage where if they're on the field together, there's going to be magic that happens there, and it's really exciting to see. But that's where I've kind of planted my flag is with Corey Davis as a league winner.
All right, parting out of the NFL topics, I will partially say too, there was a lot of people sleeping on Aaron Jones. I would never call him a sleeper, but now that Aaron Rodgers is solidified on the offense, stop trying to sleep on Aaron Jones. He's going to be amazing. Yeah,
he's just going to blink and outperform his ADP again.
And in case anybody hasn't been paying attention, since we only do episodes weekly, Teddy Bridgewater is the starting quarterback for Denver, which I don't think it surprised me given if Drew Lock would have looked a little better in this last preseason game, I would have been shocked to hear this news, but he didn't look great, and Teddy did, so I'm not surprised. I'm excited for Jerry Jeudy and some of the other weapons on the offense. I think it's going to be good for them. It'll be interesting to watch that in fantasy this year. And then Robbie Anderson catching the bag, getting $25 million on a $29 million on a 2-year extension. So excited for him as well. But like Jake said on Twitter, I think the other day, it probably, at least for the next year or two, hurts DJ Moore a little bit, but we'll see. We do really need to see how Sam Darnold's going to be able to support weapons in this offense too, especially with hopefully a healthy Christian McCaffrey for the year. So
yeah, it's all going to come down to Darnold in that offense. The wide receiver, that's probably one of the most talented wide receiver depth charts in football. I said one of. There's a lot of teams that have an argument there. You're talking
Pittsburgh,
Dallas, Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh. I think a lot of people probably sleep on the Denver wide receiver core as well. Yeah, it's a lot deeper than people realize. A lot of talent there. So, there's a lot of really good teams. This is going to be a fun season, man. I'm excited.
I'm so excited. So excited. Somebody
couple
texted
more
me today
weeks.
and they were like, "You want to join a fantasy league?" And I was like, "Ooh, I just dropped out of one, so maybe." And then he filled the spot by the time I could get to my phone. But
damn,
I almost did it.
Almost.
I'm ready for fantasy. I'm excited. It's
Same.
so close. I have my
Same.
final draft next week, and I'm super excited.
I've got like 3. I've got a draft on Monday with shout out Ryan, his fantasy league. We got that draft on Monday, and then with the JWB guys, we're hosting a league as well, which is drafting in a couple. I think this on the 7th, September 7th. I think we're drafting. So got a lot of. I've still got like 4 more drafts coming up. I'm in like 2 currently going on, maybe 1 more. I can't quit, man. I can't stop taking on leagues.
I'm gonna change what I was gonna do for my first topic based on this conversation because it just made me excited to talk about this some more. So I said I was gonna get away from the NFL, and I'm not. So my first topic today, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce it. Then is given this is truly draft season, right? So like a lot of dynasty drafts have already happened or happened closer to after the NFL draft, but the true big redraft season is kind of like the 2 weeks leading up to the start of the season.
Yeah.
So probably a lot of people drafting this week and definitely a lot of people drafting next week. So given that, what is your ideal draft position? Where do you want to draft specifically for the 2021 season? Where would be the best place for you to be drafting?
I mean, I
tell
think
me where the hardest place would be too.
I think the easy answer is, as cliche as it is, the 101 is probably the preferred draft spot for a lot of people. I personally, my favorite spot to draft is the 3rd spot because you still get the benefit of being there on the turns, whereas you're not waiting quite as long as you are on the outside, and you're still guaranteeing yourself a top 3 running back, which I think as we've seen over the last few years, like the top 3 running backs aren't typically too separated. And then a reason I like 3rd too is I've personally found that when I'm drafting from that spot, it's easier, at least it seems easier, to avoid a lot of the like the tier breaks that you run into. And to kind of go off of that, the spot that I hate picking from the most is like the 9 spot. If we're talking like a 12-team league, the 9 spot is the fucking worst because I feel like the few times that I have drafted from there, I'm running into tier break after tier break where I'm reaching for somebody to a point that I'm not happy with it, or I just end up hating everybody that's available to me after like the 5th round. Like,
yeah, I think it's interesting that you said that because I'm gonna go with my hardest first since you talked about it as your favorite. I think the number 3 spots for this season is one of the hardest places to draft from because the top 2 running backs are pretty set in stone. You have CMC and you have Dalvin Cook. And then you get to the 3rd spot, and I think that's actually where it gets more difficult. This is why I think, because your first pick of your draft is potentially a make or break position for you. Like for me, in past, just with a little bit of recency bias here, I had Kamara during his injury-riddled season a couple years ago, and then I had Saquon when he was out for the entire season. And it fucked my team for the whole year. I was trying to make trades, trying to come back, and I could never successfully recover from those major running back injuries. And so it makes it really tough. And so at the 3rd position now, you have Derrick Henry, you have Alvin Kamara, and you have maybe like a Saquon or something like that too. But really, like for me, it's probably between Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry of what you're going to take at the 3 position. And it's a make or break for you. And so I think that is a very hard decision to make.
Alvin Kamara.
There's
your answer.
That's how I feel too, but I think you are running a risk injury with Alvin Kamara more so potentially than Derrick Henry, but the bigger concern for me is the change in quarterback. And I think you are taking a major step down from the Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston as opposed to Drew Brees.
I mean, clearly, but
then you also have the problem where Drew Brees just loved to throw and target to Alvin Kamara. I think most people will realize, especially with the lack of weapons on the offense, that Alvin Kamara is the number 1 target for this offense, especially since Michael Thomas is out. But that actually makes it more difficult because now you're going to have probably some pretty significant coverage on Alvin Kamara.
Where I'm going to come back to that and say that I don't think that's an issue is we saw Kamara perform just fine last year without Michael Thomas, but also while yes, Drew Brees lacked a lot of the arm strength that other quarterbacks did and reads defenses better than most and knows when to check down, I think people are underestimating the amount of plays that looked like checkdowns that were designed to go to Kamara. Like the offense truly runs through him, and he's such a weapon for that offense that him being the number 2, that's fine because you can throw him in the slot if you want him to, and he could play the Michael Thomas role. Like, there's no reason. Like, if you said Alvin Kamara, you're going to play wide receiver for the first 8 weeks of the season until Michael Thomas is back, he's going to put up the exact same numbers that he is right now. Nothing is going to change from his performance. And the reason I say he's the guy for me is Derrick Henry. If I'm going to draft him in the 3rd spot, as we saw last year, I am drafting him at his ceiling. We're talking, especially mostly because we both play almost exclusively PPR formats. Yeah. We're talking about a guy who ran for 2,000 yards and scored 17 touchdowns and still only finished as the PPR running back 3. Like, you're drafting him at his ceiling at that point, whereas the ceiling with Alvin Kamara.
Like
the ceiling with Alvin Kamara is running back 1. He was the running back 1 last year. He was the running back 1. What was that 20? Was it 20?
It would have been the year before last. So 2019. Or was 2019 the injury year?
2019 was the injury year.
Where
Kamara, he still finishes running back 9. Like, we're talking about a guy, like, the worst season that we've seen him play, he was still the running back 9, and if that's my pick in the 3rd overall spot, I'm not mad about that.
No.
Like, if I have one of the top 9 scoring players in the league in the 3rd spot, like, I'm not gonna get mad. Where it hurts you is if you have a guy like McCaffrey who missed most of the year, if you have a guy like Saquon who missed most of the year, like those are the guys that hurt you. Even if Kamara has a down game, like a down game for Kamara is 15 points a week. Like that's
relatively true. I would say that one year that I had him, it was worse than that because he was trying to play through the injury, which was the problem. So he didn't have great weeks. But that being said,
even then, I mean, in 2019, he had. Where'd he go? He had 17.8 points per game still. Like, on paper, that's winning you matchups. Even if you took him in the 3rd spot, like, I don't know. I just feel like Kamara's the clear choice there for me, but that's also why, like, I like picking from the 3rd spot, though. Like, if you look past that point in the draft, like, sure, you have some decisions to make there, but for me, if I get a top 3 running back, I'm good. And then there's going to be a running back that falls. There's somebody that's going to go under that I'm going to get over their ADP. So somebody's going to fall to me at the 2nd pick there. Like I just did a dynasty startup, a 14-team dynasty startup where I was picking from the 4 spot. So pretty similar to picking from the 3 spot in my opinion, where I traded out of the 1st and I was still able to grab Najee and Antonio Gibson with back-to-back picks in the late 2nd. Like there's going to be guys that are going to be league winners there that are going to fall to you, but you also have the choice then if you want to do a 0 running back build or like a hero running back build where you go running back and then you grab, wide receiver, you're still getting guys in the tier of, that's going to be your range of, you're looking at Metcalf, you're looking at Allen Robinson, you're looking at A.J. Brown. Like, there's going to be wide receivers that fall to you in that point. Whereas I think, like, if I'm at the turn, if you're at, like, the 10, 11, 12 turn, you have to hit on those first 2 picks or you're fucked. You can't have if you have the injury in the 3rd spot, you can survive it. If you have the injury picking 9, 10, you're not coming back from that.
Yeah, that's probably true, which is why I will say I think based on a couple leagues, and I've done way more mock drafts this year than I've ever done before in my life, and I think the 4 position is easier to draft from just because it makes that decision for me that much easier. If
you just like take Kamara, whoever falls.
I take
Jonathan Taylor.
You
take Jonathan Taylor.
I'm with you that I think he's going to be great. I'm not so convinced that he's going to beat out some of these other guys yet, but That being said, at the 4 position, it just makes my decision much easier. And I think that, to be completely honest, probably like the 4 through 7 are of the top RBs right now and the top 10 running backs, right? I think that is a pretty convoluted pool where any way you go, you're probably going to be fine barring injury. It's just going to be really hard for you to pick who's going to be the outstanding running back in that that specific set of people. But I think my favorite place to draft from right now, be it mock drafts or a couple of the real drafts that I've had, is the number 8 position. And I think it's because what I've seen, and I've seen a lot of success for me still doing running back to running back drafting. Mm-hmm. So 2 running back draft and getting 2 top 10 running backs because you have the handful of people that are taking your tight ends or your wide receiver 1s in that first, second round. So end of the first, beginning of the second. And so I've still had luck, like in our ESPN redraft, I was stoked that my stack of running backs in the 8 position is Ezekiel Elliott and Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I mean,
I was pumped about that. And so I will say there's a little bit of bias in that because it's a keeper league, and I already knew I had Justin Jefferson sitting on my roster, and so I could be a little bit more risky in the first couple rounds, knowing that I had a good, solid wide receiver 1. But still, like you were saying, I have a similar mindset with you, as in I want to be not at the turn but close to the turn, so that I can plan my picks a little better, knowing that my picks are going to be not so far apart. But at the same time, I'd almost rather have it at the back half than the front. So
I'd rather be at the front.
Part of the reason I bring this up is because in my final draft next week, I'm picking at the 3 spot, and I know it's going to be a tough one for me because I've mock draft out a few different strategies at the 3 position now, and I haven't been necessarily as happy with the team breakout that I get as I was when I drafted at the 7-8 position, which is weird because you'd think drafting later could potentially put you at a disadvantage. Like you said, like the obvious choice for most people is I want the 101, but I don't really like drafting at the 101. And I don't really like to be in the middle because I like to be closer to the turn. So whether it be the 3-4 position or the 7-8 position, I don't know. But so far, I've been happier with my mock drafts when I have a player or when I build a team off the 7-8 position than I have been for the 3-4. That being said, my decision gets a little harder too at the 3 position if I'm drafting there in mock drafts and like your Waller falls to me in the 3rd round. Like if I go running back, and then Waller falls to me. At the end of the the beginning of the 3rd, I started thinking about, do I want to go with one of the top 3 tight ends now instead of going with a top wide receiver? And I haven't really liked the way that that's mock drafted out for me yet either. So I don't know. For me, I am confident in some of the breakout opportunities for later round tight ends that I'm probably always going to go receiver there as opposed to a tight end, but it gets harder to make those decisions when those players are available for you in those rounds. Like I start seeing, the Kyler Murray, do I go early quarterback with one of the potentially top 3 quarterbacks? Do I go with one of the top 3 tight ends? Do I do that, or do I try to knock out my receivers? And I don't know, I'd say based on the way that I've been mock drafting, I'm probably going to stick to a more traditional draft strategy where I do running back, and then at least get a wide receiver 1 before I move on to something else. But it is tougher to make those decisions because at the beginning of the 3rd, almost all those dudes are available.
Yeah.
So your draft strategy has to change.
Hey, man, you already know. Just pop into Discord with me. I'll help you out. I got you. I love the 3 spot. We'll build a banger of a team. You send me $5 when you win. It's all good.
I just did a mock draft recently. I have to see which one it was. I could probably pull it up on Sleeper at the 3 position. And it's not that I hated my team, but I just wasn't as happy with it as I have been in some of the later rounds. And this time, too, it was weird because, and I just pulled it up right now, and at the beginning of the 3rd, so I had Kamara and Mixon already, which I was super happy with. And then
I hate Joe Mixon.
I like Mixon. But at the beginning of the 3rd, like, Dobbins was still on the board, Swift was still on the board, like, some of these other, like, starting running backs were on the board, and I was like, holy shit, am I in a position where I have to go 3 running backs? And I was like, you know what, I will never do this in real life, so I want to see how it mock drafts out in just at a 3-position mock draft, like, fuck it. And so I took Kamara, Mixon, and Dobbins back to back to back. And truly, I wanted Gibson there instead of Mixon, but he went 2 spots before me. But I ended up with an okay roster. I still just wasn't stoked about it, and so I had a hard time convincing myself that that's the strategy I'd want. And then I've done a couple other, like I said, at the 3 position that I just haven't loved either. But
I am a huge advocate for robust RB, so I love going running back, and not giving a flying fuck about it afterwards. But I do get the arguments against it. I do get the arguments for some of the other drafts there. But for me, my kind of preferred draft strategy, especially when I pick in one of the early spots, is wide receiver so deep. It's such a deep position. When you look at the difference between the top running backs versus the top wide receivers, the top running backs give you staunchly more of an advantage. So if I if especially in a situation like that where there's a legitimate top, call it 16 running back on the board in my 3rd round pick, I'm going to take them 9 times out of 10 because I know the advantage that gives me. It gives me a huge trade advantage later on when one of the 0 RB guys realizes that J.D. McKissick isn't good without Alex Smith and he's begging somebody for a running back, and I can flip him a J.K. Dobbins for a Calvin Ridley type wide receiver. Like, I'm just going to smash that all day and then some. And it's going to be what it is. And I'm going to win the league, and I'm going to call it a day.
Yeah, I'm with you for the most part. I don't know. My decisions are tougher, so I was curious what your opinion was. Like I said, I sent you the screenshot the other day too of one of my other drafts that I did with the 3 position, which was completely unfeasible. Where Christian McCaffrey fell to the 3 position, and I took McCaffrey, and then I got Gibson as well at the number 2 position.
Yeah, that was
and
a
I got
joke.
Kittle,
That was a
and
joke
I
of a
got-
draft.
It was insane. I was like, you can't even give me this as a mock draft sleeper. You're just like building my hopes up too much.
Here's what we'll do, just to give you like a realistic perspective. You and I'll get you in a mock draft with some of the more like the industry people that I'm friends with, and we'll see more realistically how a draft will go. I'll make sure you get the 4 spot or the 3 spot, and we'll see.
Part of the interesting thing too is like my work buddies, a lot of them like don't play fantasy or haven't played fantasy in years or whatever. Like they've been on a break, so I think it's going to be an unpredictable. Like it's not going to be a bunch of dudes that play all the time. It's going to be
here's my argument to that
a lot
is
of ADP.
I think a lot of them are going to look to people that do play a lot. You underestimate the amount of casuals that are part of fantasy Twitter and are part of fantasy YouTube and all of it. Like there's so many people who take a lot of what people like. There's going to be people when I write these articles that are going to take my word as like gospel. And while I have had a lot of success in fantasy, and Kyle, and you know I've had a lot of success in fantasy, like we've talked about this a lot, not everything I say is going to be right. No matter how hard I try, I can't predict what happens on game day. I can use analytics and I can use everything I have to the best of my abilities, but ultimately, I'm not going to be right. But people are going to treat...
It's the same problem for anybody, right? Like you listen to any of, like even the ESPN analysts, right? Like people that have been doing this forever and they get paid a lot of money to do this, they're wrong sometimes. And I think the interesting thing is ADP might not be the best measure of success, but more often than not, the fantasy community does a pretty good job of just the ADP. So like people that are unfamiliar with fantasy football, even if you stick to ADP, you're probably going to end up with an okay team, barring injury. But it's not an easy thing to do to predict what's going to happen because you can't, especially when like coaching staffs are changing, rookies are coming in that might break out, quarterbacks are changing. It's not possible for you to be able to predict what's going to happen. So you can't just take anybody's shit as gospel, but you have to look out there for some sort of information because if you just go in blind, then maybe you're fine, but probably you're not, especially if you're going to avoid ADP and like think you're going to have your own draft strategy and you don't know what you're fucking talking about. You're going to end up drafting Travis Etienne in the 3rd round when he's potentially out for the whole season. So,
hey, man. One of my coworkers was talking to me about that. They have like a $500 league that they play in, and somebody drafted Cam Akers, Michael Thomas, and Etienne.
Oh, your money's just in the toilet.
Yeah, you are burning cash. And that was a guy who just printed out the top 300 and just took it as gospel. Like, crazy. But
that is crazy.
Anyways, that was a great topic. I do appreciate that topic. You know, I love talking about fantasy football. Make sure we will start.
I'm excited about it.
Kyle and I have a different podcast coming up soon that Kyle keeps saying he's not going to be a part of, but he has no choice. I'm forcing him to do it. So we have a football podcast that we'll be starting to record shortly here. He doesn't have to be part of every episode, but he will be an integral part of the episodes.
I love talking about football, but my problem is like, right, like not that I think that people come to us as looking for necessarily like football advice, but I think that if I'm going to be trying to put my opinion out there, that I should be educated enough to make those opinions count and not just saying things. And a lot of what I say is truly opinion based on what I see week to week, and I don't come from a sports background. I didn't even start playing fantasy until about 4 years ago, and most of that was like, hey dude, you want to play fantasy? And I was like, yeah, fuck it, sure, why not? Like I need something to do. And so I didn't get passionate about it until really the last 2 years, and so I don't know that I am the right person to be on a fantasy football podcast.
But here's why you are. Is this podcast is going to give people a perspective from so many different fields. I didn't play football to the level that a lot of our guys have. There are going to be 3 guys on the podcast who have played college football. They have played football at a very high level. I have played fantasy football at a very high level. And there, of those guys that have played football to a really high level, they haven't played fantasy football to a really high level.
That's true.
And you have played fantasy to a level that's higher than a lot of them, even though you're not, haven't dove super deep into it yet. It's gonna be so nice to offer so many different perspectives about what's going on in football.
Yeah.
Because more people in the fantasy football world are like you than are like me or like the other guys that are going to be on the podcast. Like, there, more people are at that level of interest in fantasy, but a lack of deep understanding of the game of football. And
Yeah,
I think
that's
that's what's going to make so many perspectives fun. I'm going to learn a lot about the game of football from talking to guys who have played football, and they're going to learn a lot about fantasy from me. And you are going to be able to kind of soak all of that up, and I think it's going to help you kind of like evolve a little bit as a football fan and as a fantasy football fan.
Fantasy football, for those that are like your casual football watchers too, is a long, deep rabbit hole into
Yes.
getting more and more invested into football too. And Jake and I have this conversation plenty of times, but I used to watch Dallas Cowboys games only, and that was it, and that's all I needed. And I really wasn't that invested. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't anything particularly important to me. And now I'm watching, 6-8 games a week, plus the highlights of any of the other games that have happened. And I've got it on an iPad and an iPhone and my TV and my laptop, and I'm watching tons and tons of football. And it really does wrap you in, even if you're not like a huge football fan. It's a good opportunity to get together with friends and just have a good time. Which is why I convinced all my buddies at work to join a league amongst each other too, just so we could have some fun together and kind of de-stress from some work stuff as well, just have some fun. But that's all I got on that topic.
Man.
Draft strategies are wild, man. People, no running back strategies blow my mind.
Tell me about it. Anyways, so we're going to move on to my topic here. Kyle, I saw that you finished your beer. Do you want to go ahead and give us a rating on that?
Yes, it was. It smelled like it was going to be delicious, and I was really excited about it. And then it tasted above average, but nothing crazy too. So I'll give it a 7-1. Pretty good beer, nothing crazy, but I would drink it again.
We like it. I'm going to go ahead and rate mine as well. I haven't finished it yet, but if you think Summer Shandy is not a good beer, this is the beer that would convince you that you can have a beer like Summer Shandy that is very, very good. This is like, it's not overly sweet, but you can tell the fruits in there. It's a very, very good beer. I'm going to give this a 7.9. Might be the highest rated non-stout I have on my list so far.
That's good. I don't like Summer Shandy. I think Summer Shandy is the one-hit wonder of the beer world. It had its one summer where everybody loved it, and then I don't even see it around that much anymore. Maybe that's just a local area thing for me, but I think there's probably your fanatics that are still out there that love fucking Summer Shandy, but I don't find it to be a beer that I would go to ever. And I think I've had it maybe once or twice in the last couple of years, and I wouldn't pick it up by choice ever.
Makes sense. This tastes like Summer Shandy can taste kind of fake, whereas this tastes real. Like if you have real lemonade versus the powdered Minute Maid lemonade, you can tell the difference. This is a drink more so than it's a beer. It's like a beer based cocktail.
It is a very
essentially
color.
Yeah, it's very. You can kind of see it for our YouTube watchers. It's a very thick looking beer, and there's fruit puree in it, so it's gonna be thick, and it's very, very good.
I like Leinenkugel, I just don't like Summer Shandy. But
yeah. Hey, you win some, you lose some. Sorry, Leinenkugels.
You do indeed. I am going to crack a second beer.
We love to see it.
My second beer is going to be the Borderlands Noche Dulce. It is a Moonlight Vanilla Porter with Mexican vanilla.
Ooh.
I'm excited about it. Here's the can for all you folk out there.
Interesting. Very basic
Borderlands
looking
is
can.
local in Arizona, so as are most of the things that you get on the solo shelf at Total Wine.
Yep. We love to see it. Anyways, we will move on to my first topic here. And our first two topics took a little bit of time up, so I'm not going to take too much time with this second topic. But I want to kind of know, Kyle, what in your mind is the perfectly built cheeseburger? This was a topic that was submitted, or a question that was submitted by our friend at It's Just Fantasy on Twitter. Tony sent me this in a DM and said we should talk about it. So I'm not talking about the type of meat that you're using or anything like that, but from the bun and the toppings that you put on the burger, how would you dress the perfect burger for you?
That's a great question. And I will tell you that if I was going to make it at home, I follow the Gordon Ramsay tutorial for Gordon Ramsay burgers every single time that I make burgers, because it is fantastic. But I'm going to draw out here for myself and make sure that I have the correct toppings and everything to make the perfect burger, because I think that I'm a burger guy. Somebody recently called me that at work. They said, "You're a burger guy, I guess, huh?" And I said, "Yes, I am. I am indeed a burger guy. I love
Trust me,
burgers."
I'm right there with you.
And so I think this is an important topic to talk about because it's probably contentious for some people. And I will say, Gordon has always told me that I need to mix like sirloin, ground chuck, and ground beef into my burger, and I've never done it. So because some of those meats aren't as available, dude. That's one thing I miss about the Midwest is you go to like any local grocery store in the Midwest, and they have like 4,000 different kinds of beef, and that's not a thing here. So,
I mean, you got Dickman's.
Dickman's is okay. It's not too bad, but they still don't have everything.
So let's start with the bun. What kind of bun would you pick for your perfect burger?
I would pick I just actually had this on a sandwich yesterday, but it's a soft, and it's like an onion bun.
Oh, yep.
That's the best way I can describe it, but it has like instead of having like the poppy seeds or whatever the fuck, it's like onion buns. Delicious. So good, especially when they're fresh and soft.
They are very good. But my choice for my bun, it's apparently a very contentious thing in the burger community. I'm a pretzel bun guy. I love me a pretzel bun.
I don't care for pretzel buns that much, just because I think that more often than not they come out very dry. And I think if they're not, like I think if they're a soft bun, I think pretzel buns can still be good because you get all that salt flavor in it as well. But I think more often than not, you're going to get one that's a little too dense and too dry.
I luckily haven't run into too many bad pretzel buns in my life, but that is where I start. Next up, would you put any sauces on your preferred burger?
Yes, 100% I would. So I am a ketchup, mustard, mayo guy.
You're a trio guy.
I didn't used to do the trio, but then somebody introduced me to like just mayo on a burger at one point in time, and I avoid it now sometimes just because mayo is fucking terrible for you health-wise, but also burgers probably aren't that good for you either, and I eat a lot of fucking burgers. But I think the mayo adds a pretty unique flavor to the burger, and I acquired the taste for all different kinds of mustard really more recently. Like I really do like mustard now, so I put mustard, and ketchup is just a classic. So I do all three. I'm a 3 sauce guy.
I respect it. Not a mayo guy. Definitely not a mustard guy. I do put ketchup on my burgers, but I've recently been on a spicy ketchup kick, which is, I guess you can buy spicy ketchup, but I make it myself.
You can buy it, that's true.
Where I just mix ketchup and Valentina's hot sauce, and it is delicious. I right now would put that on my burger. Not a ton of it, but enough.
That's fair.
Next set of toppings, would you put any vegetables on? Or no, let's go to cheese first. What kind of cheese would you put on your preferred?
Hands down, easy.
All right, that was easy. I'm a very basic American cheese guy. I know it's not really cheese, but something about the saltiness of fake waxy whey protein goodness on a cheeseburger just hits different.
Dude, pepper jack. You can't beat pepper jack, because even people that don't like spice, it is a flavorful cheese that has just a little bit of heat to it, and that makes it have a little bit more flavor. I love pepper jack.
Yeah, pepper jack's very good. Don't get me wrong. If I were to pick something that's like pepper jack's probably like 5th on my list of cheeses that I would get on a burger.
That's sad.
I would do American. I would do cheddar. I would do Gouda. I love me some Gouda.
Gouda's pretty good.
And then I really like what's it called? Now I'm blanking on it. Like Colby Jack.
I don't really go for the classics that often in terms of like your cheddar and American. I more often than not would go to a Colby Jack or a pepper jack.
Yeah, Colby Jack's really good. I think Colby Jack's probably a very underrated cheese for a lot of people. All right, next let's move on to veggies. Are you throwing any veggies on your burger?
So I think the classic lettuce is always a go for me. I like lettuce on burgers. I know you're a little bit of a picky eater in general, more so than I am, but I think lettuce is a classic, and I like lettuce on burgers. But I will say the must-have now, and I can, again, shout out to Gordon Ramsay. I'm going to have to DM him on Twitter for the Instagram account and tell him we're sponsored by Gordon Ramsay now, but grilled onions. So if you take a good, solid onion slice, a little olive oil, salt and pepper, and throw it straight onto the grill and let it just fucking char up. Grilled onions add a ton of flavor to a burger, and they are so good. Love grilled onion.
I love the taste of onion. I don't know if I'll ever get past the texture thing, but we'll see.
Texture's tough for me too, but I've come around to onions in more adult life.
I just put onion powder in as part of the seasoning that I use,
Yeah.
so I still get the flavor of it, but I don't have to deal with it. But the onion bun also could potentially be kind of a way around that because you don't get like a lot of the texturiness with the onion buns.
Yeah.
The only, I guess, vegetable you would call that I would put on my perfect burger would be avocado. I love me avocado. And
avocado a fruit or a vegetable?
It's technically a fruit, but it's the closest thing to a vegetable that I'm putting on the burger. So,
Okay, fair enough.
all right. What else? What else kind of tops off your perfect burger? Do you put bacon? Do you put anything else on it?
Must have bacon.
Yes, agreed.
Must have bacon. And I will say that an interesting thing as well here for you, who's a texture person, and I think a great alternative to the grilled onion is onion ring. Okay, you throw an onion ring on there, and you get the crunch instead of the mush, like that people can't really tolerate.
Onion rings, I'm not a huge fan of, but onion strings, like the super thin,
crispy onion strings.
those are good. I can do those on a burger. Those are good.
Then you get kind of like the grilled onion flavor, but you change the texture, and it helps out some people that have texture problems too. So
Definitely. My Uncle Kyle mentioned a Colby Jack mozzarella mix for the burger. I think that would slap.
I'd probably rather do a Colby pepper jack mix myself personally, but I could eat a fucking brick of pepper jack if we're being honest.
Clearly
I
you
love
could.
pepper jack cheese.
So for me, bacon is a must-have 100%. But the other thing that if I'm eating my perfect burger,
here's my perfect burger.
I love that you drew it out. For me, the other thing that's on my perfect burger is a fried egg. Something about a fried egg on a burger just hits so different that I can't imagine a perfect burger without that on it.
My problem is, and I know everybody loves that, but along the same note as like texture, is I don't like yolk.
We talked about this when I was down there.
Egg yolk grosses me the fuck out.
I love egg yolk.
If somebody puts egg yolk running down my burger, it makes me want to throw up. So I think if you do like a thoroughly fried egg, like you fried it
you could do like an
through,
overhard egg.
There's probably a good chance that I would like that, but I don't know, I dodge the whole egg on burger thing. It's not really been a thing that I've ever gone for.
Nothing wrong with that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm a very basic burger guy. I don't think you need a whole lot to make a good burger.
Go-to burger joint.
Probably Shake Shack.
I think we've already talked about this.
Yeah. Shake Shack.
Five Guys for me.
Five Guys is right there. I think Shake Shack, I get more for what I spend than I do at Five Guys because I eat so plain.
Maybe I would, but
because I eat so. Shake Shack's also not. I definitely go to Five Guys more than I go to Shake Shack, just because the only Shake Shack by me is in Chicago, and I don't want to go into the city for a burger. If I'm going into the city, I'm gonna eat something much better than just a basic cheeseburger. Like there's places in the city with like Kobe beef burgers. Like I'm gonna pick that. But Shake Shack's burgers, I've had a better experience every single time. Actually, I don't think it's everywhere.
It's not.
No, I'm not talking about Shake Shack.
Shake Shack also is not everywhere though. It's very regional.
Correct. There's this place in North Carolina. It's a North Carolina thing, apparently. I don't know if it's anywhere else. It looks like there's a couple locations in maybe New York, but it's called American Burger Company. Hands down, the best like fast burger that I've ever had. Jess and I went to Charlotte, North Carolina, and I shit you not, in the 7 days that we were there, we ate this place 6 times. It was so good, just for being like a fast, like we never waited more than 10 minutes for our food, and it was still made fresh every single time, and it was so good, so good.
Ground elk or wild boar for the base.
I've had elk burgers. I've never had boar. I've never even just eaten like wild boar. I've never had that, but I'm intrigued.
I blame my grandfather for this, rest in peace. But one time he told me that the hamburger that he was feeding me when I was a kid was turtle meat, and I freaked out as a little kid, and I think that's deterred me from wanting to have weird meats in my life. So I've literally only really ever fucked around with like beef.
Turtle's good. I've had turtle soup before, and it's real good.
I don't know, he like pointed out some like texture on the meat too, and he was like, "You see that? That's like because it's a turtle." I was like, "Don't fucking tell me that."
Like, shut up, Grandpa.
I was like 4 years old.
You probably did. You probably did.
I probably didn't want to eat it after that. But yeah, he told me I was eating a turtle burger.
But yeah, shout out to Tony again, at It's Just Fantasy on Twitter. He was the one who suggested that topic. So thank you, Tony. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, Kyle, what do you got for topic number 2 for you?
All right, I am moving completely out of the realm of what we've been talking about.
We love to
But
see it.
because of the way that it is, because COVID has obviously changed everything. So, and I will say this as a transition into this topic, Pfizer's 100% approved by the FDA. So anybody that was waiting on FDA approval and that was your like mental blockage, go get Pfizer vaccine now that it's available and approved. But on another note, it's changing the way that everybody is living currently, but also the implications on the future are unpredictable. But I think we're starting to see the writing on the wall of some of the impacts that this might have. And so I will ask you, what do you think about now people's unwillingness to go back to work at the office? People have gotten the taste of working from home. What do you think are the benefits of that? What do you think is the drawbacks of it? How do you think it impacts the company versus the person? And kind of where do you think we're going to end up going with this?
I think COVID has kind of shown that a lot more jobs can be completed just fine from home. I do agree that there are some careers, mine included, where there is an aspect of needing to be in an office environment and needing to be front facing with certain people that is important and must be considered. That being said, how do I see it going? I do think we're going to see a lot more organizations transition to at least a hybrid environment, if not a completely work from home environment. And I think a lot of that is going to come from the fact of companies are just going to generally be unwilling to try and find a different way to recoup the loss that they have now on these office buildings that they've spent X amount of millions of dollars building and buying. And a lot of them, yes, but
Not necessarily, but
there are some companies that invest an insane amount of money to make their office environment just something different. And I think it's gonna tell a lot about the companies, because too many companies, I think, use their office setting as like a recruiting tool for employees.
Yeah, that's true. The atmosphere of the work environment for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations have kind of ridden on the coattails of, hey, you can come work in this really cool office where we have beer on tap and you can play ping pong on your breaks. There's a lot of organizations that have kind of run off of that. So it's going to be interesting to see how those companies kind of come back from it. But I think COVID's shown that a lot of jobs, people don't need to be in the office for a lot of shit. Like sales jobs.
One of my favorite quotes of all time is, that could have been an email. That meeting could have been an email.
Yes.
And I think COVID has really ironed out the true nature of that statement. And there are so many things that could have been an email.
Oh yeah.
Could have been a 30-second conversation as opposed to a 30-minute meeting. There's so much inefficiency in the office a lot of the times when it comes to things like that, and unnecessary things that you do just for the sake of doing them because you are present amongst each other.
There's a joke at where I work that a lot of the times they have meetings just to plan other meetings.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time. All the time. So often does that happen when I work.
I'm lucky in that I'm not at the level in the organization that I have to be in meetings like that. But also with my job is very front facing to families. And my role to an extent has to be in person sometimes. There's a very legitimate argument that like face-to-face meetings for my career field and the role that I'm in, it just has to happen. There's just a level that has to be there. But and my organization has done a good job of kind of being willing to be like, if you have nothing on your calendar and 3 of your 5 people that are on your team have to be in the office anyway, work from home. Like if you don't have to be here, we're not going to force you to. But I don't know. I feel that more and more organizations are going to have to offer remote employment. And I think that's going to be good for a lot of organizations because it's going to open up their employee pool, because there's going to be a lot of really good employees who just don't have the means, or based off of situations that are going on in their personal lives, they can't relocate. And I think you're going to alleviate a lot of that issue by being able to be, a more remote environment, but also it's going to be very organizationally dependent, because I've done a lot of research on this for my organization. And I found that there's some industries that have thrived from work from home, and their work from home has caused their their sales to increase and their profitability has gone up by a substantial point, and they're now willing to, remove the office environment, and that's going to save them a lot of money moving forward. And there are some industries that have struggled from this, and it's ultimately, I think it's going to be very industry dependent, but I think it's showing that a lot more can be done from, an at-home environment.
Yeah, and I totally get everything you're saying. I think there's some interesting things that I thought of as you were speaking to, and I can kind of burn through my list too. But like the biggest thing for me personally is I know for a fact, and this isn't to say that I don't get distracted and have days when I'm not very productive at work, because I think everybody has those days.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, especially when you don't work in a situation where you're like, I think people that are on like a factory line have probably relatively consistent productivity. But like if you're not in that type of a work where it's kind of like I'm doing this one thing all day long, then everybody has those moments when you're less productive. That being said, I think I would have challenges personally if I worked from home full time, where like I'd be sitting in doing a thing or whatever, or like my calendar wouldn't be very busy that day, and I'm getting paid salary, and I might end up spending half of my 8.5 hour workday like playing video games. Because like one of you guys would message me and be like, "Hey bro, what are you doing right now? You want to play some games?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I don't have a meeting for like 2 hours. Like I don't need to do anything right now." And I'd like hop on the game.
But here's my counter argument kind of to that though. Why is that a bad thing? If you don't have work, like if you legitimately have nothing else to do, why should you not be able to do that?
See, I think that's an interesting point, right? I mean, that's where I get into the sour, like kind of like the salary versus hourly wage conversation. Is what I think people are. I think what we're seeing a little bit in terms of this relationship now is you're seeing that people can be much more efficient about the things that they do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. But because of the fact that they're being paid hourly or maybe even salary and stuck to like the 9 to 5 or what have you, they kind of drag out and become less efficient inherently so that they have things to do.
Yeah.
Like you take longer on a project just because you're getting paid to be there, right? So you might as well have something to work on.
When I worked at Target, I shit you not that I made things take as long as they could, because I learned very early on when I started working there, I would help all the guests that I could, but when I had my restock or like my new stuff to put out on the floor that came from the shipment that day, I would try and finish that as quickly as I could. And I'd be done in 30 minutes, and I would have nothing to do for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, then just walking the aisles aimlessly being like, "Can I help you find anything?
Yeah.
You need help finding the cheese? It's in aisle 2. Like,
yeah, I feel you. I think the interesting thing though is like for me, right? Like, and I think people have figured that out working from home, right? Because a lot of the people that are doing this as a temporary thing, getting paid like their traditional salary or their 8 hour a day pay, are finding like, hey man, I have a week to do this project, but I could finish it in a day. And so they like fucking kill the whole thing in a day at home, and then they can spend 4 days during the course of that week just taking off and doing whatever they want at home. And I think part of it, right, is like part of the reason where you don't see that in the work environment so much is just because there's eyes on supervision, where people are staying busier longer, but not because they're being more productive, but because they feel like somebody's watching them and they need to be not even more productive, but they need to be consistently busy, right? So a lot of the busy things that people are probably doing might be useless. So I think you might see an increase in efficiency as a company, but the problem is how do they now, as a company, decide how they're going to compensate for that? Because if you're going to have me clock in like during the active hours that I'm working, right? Like I could finish a project in maybe 2 hours when I said if I was in the office it would take me 10, right? Like how do you deal with the compensation factor? Because you might, if you're still going to be doing it on like an hourly basis and I'm not getting paid salary, then I'm still going to take just as long at home to do it. You know what I mean?
I think you have to, if you're going to work from home, you almost have to be on a salary basis in that extent, unless you're a role where like, I know a couple people whose work from home roles are very much just, you need to work 40 hours a week. We do not care what hours those 40 are, because we are a 24/7 company, and you have to be working around the clock anyways. So as long as you're getting your work done, we don't care. And I think if you're on salary, they're not paying you to work a 40-hour work week. They're paying you to do the tasks that you are assigned when you are assigned to do them. Yeah. And your salary is just kind of a, here you go. This is your compensation for that. So I think
the expectation at my job is very different, though. Like the expectation is that if you're at work, then you are busy. You are doing something.
No,
so
agreed.
If you don't have anything you don't have a specific deadline to meet, then you need to find something else, right? Like you need to. There was a day when like the power was out where I work, and they're like, "All right, grab a fucking broom and a mop, like do something that doesn't require like a computer, like start cleaning or something." You know, like there's the expectation is that you're going to be busy, like they're going to get their 40 hours worth of work out of you. Again, not to say that that's an everyday thing. Like, so there's not somebody over my shoulder harassing me every day to like pick up a fucking mop if I'm not actively working on something. But that being said, like the expectation is that you're being productive for 40 hours a week. So.
And I do, knowing your career, I do think that's very different than a lot of careers. Like, I don't know, my industry, it's almost accepted that there's going to be downtime at points. I think ultimately, like it's that's going to be very industry dependent. But I think if you're paying a salary, like it shouldn't matter when that work's done.
I don't totally disagree with you. I think employers are going to have to adjust to the process of deadlines and workloads though, right? Because I think if I start to say like, hey, what used to take me 5 days is now taking me 2 because I'm being more productive at home, they're going to have to figure out like, now what am I giving people as a deadline, and am I imposing the same thing on people that are working in the offices at home? Like I think this increases the complications, and I'm not trying to make excuses for companies because I think they can do this and I think they should do this, and I think there is a lot of benefits. It's tough for me in my career. There's no way I could work from home full time, given what I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. It's not possible. But there are, and we had talked about this for a little bit at my work at one point in time of doing like you get like a one telework day a week where you'd work from home on a day of the week of your choosing, and that way you could focus on like, because I work essentially an 8.5 9-hour day, and it's difficult to get things done during the work week if I need to, like on like normal business hours for other places. They're like, hey, you can telework this week, and the expectation is like all those things that you're trying to get done, you do them on that day. So like if you have like a haircut or something like you need to get done, you're doing it on that day. You're not trying to do that in the middle of like a work week,
right,
on one of your other days or something, you know. So like there was some talks of flexibility there, and like we've kind of deviated back away from that, but there are options there, I think, in giving people that freedom that would help. And at the end of the day, for me, I think the biggest factor, right, is that people, I think more and more as time goes on, job satisfaction is a critical point for companies and employees. Like you have to be able to meet the standard of job satisfaction that people want, or they're not going to take the job.
Oh, 1,000%.
People are more potential employees are taking power into their own hands and trying to establish, especially if you're not hurting for money, right? Like you have the time to interview at multiple places, figure out where am I going to have the highest job satisfaction. And if a company's offering you a hybrid option, or hey, you can come in the office if you want, or you can work from home, like come into the office if you need to, but otherwise you're free to work from home. People that like that flexibility are going to take that job over the job that says you must be in the office 9 to 5 every week. You know what I mean? So like there's an inherent increase in job satisfaction if you offer people flexibility in their schedules, I think.
Yeah. So there was I'm trying to see if I can find it. It was on LinkedIn. I was scrolling through LinkedIn as I was updating my profile and like looking at stuff that's going on out there. And there was a post that was like, would you rather have a $120,000 salary or a $90,000 salary with 401k benefits, work from home option, X amount of vacation, like all these extra benefits from it. And it was like 80% of people chose that option. Like I think giving employees that level of flexibility, not only does that motivate the employee to really enjoy their job a little bit more because of the extra freedoms and extra, abilities that come with that job, people aren't chasing a salary as much as they used to be. I think a lot more people are going into passions than they were in the past, where people were becoming an accountant because it was a job that was always going to be needed and they were always going to have a salary. I think nowadays people are a lot more willing to kind of pursue their dreams a little bit. And I think if you can be an organization that offers the ability to work in a field that somebody has passion about and give them a bunch of flexibility and a bunch of benefits that they otherwise wouldn't have, I think organizations are going to have a lot more success following that model.
Dude, even if you if you give the people, like your employees, a concept of flexibility, even if they never utilize it, there's something to be said about the job satisfaction that you have just knowing that you could execute off of it.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like knowing like, hey, I am a kind of guy that needs to be in the office 5 days a week, otherwise I'm not going to get my shit done. But then something pops up, and you know that you have the flexibility in the back of your mind, like, hey, something comes up, like emergency, whatever. I can telework from my phone or my laptop or tablet or whatever the fuck, and then still take care of my personal shit. Like, there is a job satisfaction just in having that sense of flexibility in your schedule. And so I think the big thing, right, is, and what I'm driving at here is that I think businesses now are going to adapt or die here, where you're going to see a mass exodus of people leaving these corporations that are stringent and don't allow some type of flexibility for their employees, and they're just going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't just live off the, hey, you signed up for this 9-to-5 job, like you're going to do this 9-to-5 work anymore. Like, you can't just do that. And employers are no longer in necessarily the same position of power that they used to be, where they could say, like, I know that you need this job and more than I need you, so like, you don't like it, leave. It's like, no, they like you as the employer need to be attractive to the employee, and you need to bring people in and recruit people. So I think we are going to see a transition more towards higher flexibility in employers, and I think for the people that refuse to do that, they are going to suffer. And I think they're going to see probably companies that refuse to adapt just close.
Yeah, I 1000% agree. I think especially as we see, more and more companies being vocal about the offerings that they do have in terms of flexibility. Like, I've talked about them on here before, and I've talked about this exact same situation, I think, a little bit before. Dan Price, who's the CEO of a company called Gravity Payments out of Seattle, he's famous for, he took like $1 million salary cut so that the minimum wage of his employees could be $70,000 a year. Their company, when coming back from COVID, when COVID was starting to go on a little bit of a downswing, they asked, do you want to work from home? Do you want a hybrid? Do you want to work in the office? And then they just told people to, whichever of those options is going to be the best for you, follow that route. And I think I've seen other employers, like I've talked to people who work in different different companies and with different corporations, where their companies are starting to be more willing to be flexible. And we're seeing a lot of people who are gravitating towards that. Like this is a relatively small company, all things considered, in comparisons to a lot of the companies that are out there, this Gravity Payments, but they're getting thousands of applications every time they post a job, like from all around the country, because you can work remote. Like I think companies who offer flexibility are going to open up the employee pool so much more, and they're going to find themselves to be in a lot better position in the next 5 to 10 years than companies who say, nope, we're never changing. This is what we're doing. And here you go.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think truly we are at a place in time where you can no longer be the 9-to-5 of the past. Like, nobody is going to accept that as a job that they want or they find attractive anymore, and so they're going to seek out. And like you said, and I do agree with you on this, I don't think people are necessarily going to take massive pay cuts, but I think people might consider like taking $1 less an hour, or maybe $10,000 less a year potentially, depending on kind of like where that price point is, in order to find a job that they like more. And I think that's tougher at the lower salary jobs. Like, right, like I wouldn't take a cut from like 30,000 to 20,000 probably, but maybe I would take a cut from 110 to 100. You know what I mean? Like, that margin is different depending on what you're making. And I think if you could, depending on your ability to survive, like your flexibility at a certain price point, you would probably take a higher standard of living than go do something that has absolutely zero flexibility for more money.
Yeah,
everybody has a price.
Yeah, but definitely.
I think we're going to see a shift in the way that employers are marketing to the potential candidates.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that wraps it up perfectly. Like, it's going to be, COVID's changed a lot of things, and I think the business world is really going to have to adapt to it.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I completely agree. But I got nothing else to say on that either. I was just curious where you sit on it now, and I've been seeing a lot of things in the news too about, and my wife is job searching right now too, and looking for some of that job satisfaction as well. So I think it's been interesting to kind of see what people are offering to her, and I was curious what you thought of the way that we're going. But that's all I've got. What do you got for your second and our final topic today?
Well, we can kind of roll that. This wasn't going to be my second topic. Sorry for all my dogs barking in the background. No control over that. Jess just got home.
This is why Carly would say dogs over cats, or cats over dogs, by the way.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. Carly says dogs over cats. Anyways, I'm actively looking, I won't say actively. I'm not desperate to find a new job, but I am at a point where I do feel like I have to move on from my current role into something more. And I just kind of wanted to talk about that experience a little bit. Maybe not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a huge conversation, but this is one, like, your topic really kind of brings to light a lot of the things that I'm noticing with the job search that I'm currently going through, where I'm not really looking, but there's been a few job offerings that have really kind of shown me something and have offered something that make a job more appealing to me than it otherwise would have been. Like, I'm now considering career paths that I otherwise wouldn't have considered, simply because they do offer remote work options. They do offer a lot of flexibility. And I don't know, I kind of want to, like, if you were to be changing careers right now, like, what are some of the things that you'd really be looking for? Would it be a work from home option? Would it be like a salary number? Would it be not necessarily flexibility, but would it be in just something that would you take a pay cut to be doing something that you'd enjoy more? Or would you be okay doing a job that you don't like as much because it offers you a higher salary and flexibility? Like,
it's funny that you bring this topic up too, because I was thinking about adding in a topic either here or at some other point in time about kind of like what your ideal career path looks like. Because I'm similar to you right now. I'm at a kind of decision point in my life where I'm not that I need to make decisions for the rest of my life, right? But I am at a point in my current career where I need to make decisions, and I need to kind of figure out how to pave the way for my future. And I've never been really a person that had a life plan. So I'm also, despite the fact that I'm not actively looking for a job, I also have been considering some of these things in my head of like, okay, if I decide to make a switch, what is that going to look like for me? Because again, like, crunch points are coming for me just in my where I currently am, that I'm going to have to make some sort of decisions, right? So I need to start paving the way. And just really quick too, I want to tangent off a little bit, just back to what you were saying, because Carly, I can't quote this directly, but she was asking questions in an interview, right? And she's like, hey, like, you told me this, like, talk to me more about this, blah, 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 like, kind of interactive, like, trying to get the best picture of what this job might be like. And the employer came back and said something to the effect of, like, oh, wow, like, these are some of the greatest questions we've ever heard. You know, like, usually people just want the job. Like, we offer them a job and they just, like, are happy to have a job. But we're moving away from that, I think, truly, in terms of the way that employment is going to look moving forward, where people are no longer going to be willing to just take the job because you offer it to them. Like, people are going to say, like, hey, thanks for the offer. I'm going to go interview with 15 other companies and then I'll make a decision. Yeah. But more specifically to me, right? Like, my case specifically, and to answer your question very directly, is I will not go away from what I'm doing currently if I don't know with relative certainty that I'm going to be happier. Because for me right now, job satisfaction is the number one thing that's going to drive me to a different career. And if I think that, which is part of the reason I'm in school right now, there's no doubt about that. I'm in school right now to open some doors to things that I think that I will be more passionate about than what I'm currently doing. And I think that if I can find something where I am truly passionate about it, and I think that my job satisfaction is going to be high, I would take a pay cut to go do it 100%. And it's not that I am miserable right now, or like that I couldn't continue to do what I'm doing right now, but I think that I'm getting to a point in my, like, maturity as I'm getting older, that I'm recognizing the fact that I am going to be working for probably another 30 years. And if I'm going to do that, I'm not going to be miserable while I'm doing it. I have to be doing something where I'm happy. Otherwise, and I also want to be in a position where I can leave. Like, I can say, so there is some sort of a financial balance there too, where I need to be able to maintain a standard of living that I've established. I don't live a luxurious life, but I'm happy with the standard of living that I have. But also, I need to be able to save just for the contingency plan of saying, like, hey, I'm not happy here. I want to be able to walk away right now and go job search. You know what I mean? So those are huge considerations for me.
Yeah, I'm definitely in a lot of the same boats as you, where I'm currently in a role that does make me very happy. And I'm kind of at the point where it's like, because I do want my family to be more comfortable in our situation, I want to be able to buy a house. I want to feel more financially, not that I'm financially unstable, but I don't make a lot of money. comparatively. To a lot of people my age, a lot of people that I went to school with who have the same degrees that I have, like I just don't make as much. And that's partially the current job market that I live in, with the current
You've
role.
also taken a sacrifice to get a very cheap or free education at the cost of necessarily a salary. So there's a balance for you too that you can
Definitely.
be happy with. But like you said, you're also reaching a point probably where you're like, I've got the education that I want. What do I do next?
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel that for sure.
And part of it for me too is like, I have a degree that I'm very happy to have, but I have other passions that my brain keeps coming back to for some reason.
Sure.
Like, I can't get the idea of it being a teacher out of my head, and I don't know why.
That's fair.
And when I was younger, I never wanted to be a teacher. I thought I'd be a good teacher, but I never wanted to do it. And as I get older, there's something about it that keeps like my brain keeps coming back to. And I'm almost like, do I continue to make no money to get another degree cheaply, to have to then take no job for like 6 months to do my student teaching, and then get a teaching job? Like, do I do that, or do I take 5 years right now where I go back to the sales industry, I just put my axe to the grindstone for 5 years, make $500,000 to $1 million. Hello, kitty. Do I do that where I go make $500,000, $1 million plus, maybe depending on the career path that I get down and how good I do, to then be able to go back to school later to be a teacher later and have some sense of financial stability behind it? It's like I think my brain is very stuck on the financial side of things, and part of that is the way that my dad kind of taught me to be, because he was always very financially concerned about everything and wanting to be financially stable. And my wife comes from a different background from that, where she's very much like, fuck it. Like, if I could chase a passion right now, she 1000% would. And even if that meant that she had to go back to serving and bartending to make money, to get her through the training that she needs to chase that passion, or whatever that looks like. Sure. She's a lot more willing to do that than I am. And I think a lot of that to me stems back from that kind of flexibility, comfortability conversation, where it's like, I have a hard time doing something that I don't love doing.
Yeah.
But I could force myself to do that for 5 to 10 years to make a lot of money, to be able to then comfortably do whatever I want. So it's like, it's a very weird dynamic that I'm kind of stuck between. And I've been like kind of stuck on this for like a year now, of like just not really knowing what path to go down. And I just like, I like to talk to different people about it, just because I get different opinions and ideas from a lot of different people. And I don't know, it's just a really weird situation to be in, where it's like, I want a new job, but I don't really need a new job, and I don't really care if I get a new job, but I kind of also really want something more. I don't know. It's like a really weird place.
Things is, I think, and honestly, I think I would hate it if I ended up doing something like this, but I think there is, and I go back to this and I use this as a kind of like my talking point when I talk about this sometimes with some of my coworkers, but I saw a job offer one time, or a job opening at NZXT in California, putting computers together. That's all you did. You all you did 24 hours a day, but like for your 40-hour work week was you build computers. And there was something that was very appealing about that to me.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is it's mindless work, and it's not necessarily, it's relatively benign. There's nothing that takes a ton of critical thinking in order to do that. Which my job now does. It takes a lot more critical thought and analysis in order to do the things that I do now. But there is something that seems appealing about some mindless work sometimes, that it makes me wonder if I would be happy in that role. And honestly, I think the true answer is no. I think that if I did something very mindless and repetitive forever, that I would obviously burn out and I would hate it. But I think there is still like something to be said about the fact that does appeal to me in some way. And it makes me want to go towards the computer industry as a whole, knowing how much I enjoy certain aspects of it. And I don't know what that role is going to look like still, but I think I have ideas now, and I'm trying to open those options a little bit with school. But
well, and at least with something like that too, like that's a foot in the door. Like just working for NZXT at that level, like once you have a computer science degree, like that opens so many other doors for you down the road. And I think there's definitely a benefit to that. Like, I don't love my current role in the sense that I wish I could be doing more with the population of people that I work with.
Sure.
But just having the experience in my role, I think opens up a lot of doors to me later on. So it's one of those weird dynamics where it's like, you kind of almost have to take the sacrifice up front, which is where my brain is kind of leaning towards. Like, I'm willing to kind of sacrifice what I do now, because I think my long-term happiness will be better if I continue on the path that I'm on.
Sure.
But my brain still says, Jake, just go make a milli. Just get out of here.
It's really weird to have like a young midlife crisis, right? Like it's not like a life crisis, but in a way it is.
Jess says it all the time that I'm in my quarter life crisis because I started growing out my hair. I'm talking about like all this job stuff.
Truly though, you come to a career decision point, right? Because if you think about it purely from a perspective of like how we've gotten to where we are now, right? You're expected out of high school to have some concept of an idea of what you want to do, and that's how you drive your career or your decisions to go to college and everything like that. But most people are too young to have any sort of actual concept of what they want to do for the rest of their life that early. Like you just haven't really had the experience or the exposure to make a critical assessment of what you want to do with your entire life for the next 40 years or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's
right.
And in that sense, then, college helps to mature you a little bit, and then maybe you go to your master's degree and that helps you a little bit more, or maybe you go to a career for a little while and that helps you too. But there is a path that leads to about the point where we are, and I'm a couple years older than you, but even for me, right, like I've reached a point where the amount of experience that I've had, whether it be career or school or otherwise, leading up to this point has given me enough background now that I think that I'm getting closer to having the knowledge that I need and the exposure that I need to make some decisions, but also I'm feeling the pressure a little bit to make some of those decisions that I didn't really feel when I was younger. Like, you feel the pressure of, oh, I got to pick my major for college, right? Like, people, or do I want to go to college, right? Like, those two different pressures like happen, but I didn't feel it as much then as I do now. Because now, like, as a fully independent, married, guy, like, I am having to make decisions that are going to affect more things than just, like, my young, stupid self when I was, like, 20 years old, right? Like, there's more weight to some of those decisions.
Right,
so.
yeah.
And there's a lot more that goes into that, but I think we are at the age point and the experience point where those decisions are happening soon. And so this is an important conversation to have, I think, with more than one person, right? Like, to try to get some of that perspective. And I've had some conversations with people at work recently to try to kind of gauge what I'm going to do too. And a lot of them too, they're like, hey man, like, reach outside of this career field and talk to other people and like talk to friends, talk to family, and like have them help you make some of those decisions too. And it is important. Like, people have to reach out and get perspective, because even if you feel like you know everything about what you're about to go do, like, some perspective from a different place might help make those decisions as well, or solidify it or change your opinion too. So it's hard to say, man.
Yeah.
We're at a place. It's coming.
It is. Yeah. No, I'm
feeling it recently. Trust me.
Well, and trust me, you're in a better place, I think, than I am. Just because your career has offered you a little bit more stability than mine has.
True.
In a sense.
Yeah. I have a lot of stability right now. There's no doubt about that.
And that's phenomenal. And it's great to have that. But I do think that almost makes the decisions a little bit harder in a sense.
It does.
Because it's like, do I leave stability for potential?
Passion. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll bring it back to fantasy football. Do I want a guy who could potentially get me 50 points, but maybe gets me 6 or 7? Or do I want the consistent 15?
Yeah. Dude, I'm with you. Also, maybe if I could just be a Two Average Husbands talk person for the rest of my life and make money off of this, that'd be dope too. So
share the podcast. Find us some. If your company wants to sponsor the podcast, let us know. Get at us, Michelob.
Yeah.
Anyways,
we didn't try to shout out Michelob, or Jake did. So
hey, keep an eye out on
number one. We need him out here.
Keep an eye out on the Twitter, but. That's a great way, I think, to wrap it up. I just wanted to kind of have this conversation, and what better way to do it than for content?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So we want to thank you all for tuning in this week. We did notice, there was some new interaction in the chat. Tony stopped by to remind me that I'm cute. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. Congrats on the wedding again, my guy. Thanks for giving us a topic.
In the fantasy league.
He doesn't need any apologies for that one. But we do thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you check out all of our socials at 2AVG Husbands on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow myself at Jake Perry 34. You can follow Kyle at Kyle and her son, but I will let Kyle close out the rest of this episode. Thank you all for tuning in.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, guys. It's been another good one. Feel free to keep, like Jake already mentioned, following us on the social medias, as well as we're on Facebook. You can see us on, or listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. And all of our social medias have our link tree in there as well. So you can find everything else that we're on by going to any number of those and reaching out to us. You can also hit us in the personal DMs or whatever if you have topic ideas or anything you want to hear us kind of talk about or discuss amongst each other. So keep reaching out. We'll keep bringing the good beers, the good topics, and we'll have a good time. So thanks everybody for joining in for another episode of Two Average Husbands. See you next week. Peace.
Peace.